What's up my loves, my name is Paige, this is Pages with Paige, and today we're going to be doing my February wrap up. Hello my darlings, welcome to this video. Today we're going to do take 2 of my February wrap up. I tried filming this earlier this morning and my neighbour decided to whippersnipper. I've been procrastinating on this video long enough, it's time. Let's talk about the 6 books that I read in February. So like I said, I read 6 books in February. I've talked ad nauseum about the fact that we moved and my mum ended up coming up and helping us, but she was up for literally half of the month. And I found that I don't usually listen to audiobooks, or I don't listen to as much when she's around, unless I'm doing my TBR jar, as January saw. But I also thought I would listen to audiobooks while packing, but that turned out not to be the case because it was more of a communal effort, so I was talking rather than listening to anything. But I'm still glad that I got through 6 books. This equated to 2,363 pages, which was 84 pages a day. I know February is a short month, but oh lordy. Normally I try to hit at least 100 pages a day. It doesn't matter if I don't, but it just shows me how distracted I was. But it did equate to 393 pages per book. I read 1 book that was in the 200s page range, 3 in the 300s, and 2 in the 500s. I read everything being backlist, which I am so happy with because I did acquire 4 books, all of which are unread, but if you want to know more about my TBR numbers, that will be in my book haul, which I'll leave linked below. I listened to 17 hours of audiobooks, so this is me equating to literally how much time I spent listening to the audiobook. I listened to like 55 hours in January and I listened to 17 in February. So we know where predominantly I get my reading in. My average rating was a 4-star, where we had 1 3-star, 1 3.5 star, 1 4-star, and 3 4.5 stars. I read 4 fantasy, 1 horror, and 1 romance. I read 1 book physically, and then the 5 were physical and audiobook combinations. I read 1 middle grade, 3 YA, 1 new adult, and 1 adult title. I read from 4 authors I'd read from before and 2 that were new to me. I read 2 standalones. I started 1 new series, but I continued in a series and I finished off 2. So very, very happy with those stats. So for 2025, I'm trialing talking about these books in terms of rating order rather than in chronological. So unfortunately the lowest read that I had, whilst it was still good at a 3 stars, was Long Live the Pumpkin Queen by Shay Earnshaw, and I ended up giving this a 5.7 through core pile. I enjoyed seeing Sally's story told, but I could sort of see immediately what was going on, and I really enjoyed the dynamics of the nightmare town. I really loved Jack, and because of circumstances, it's really Sally coming into her own, which I enjoyed, but it didn't do anything memorable for me. I really just read it and felt like it was a book that I read. It didn't do anything wrong, but it just didn't captivate me and thrill me in the way that the movie had. And it's always difficult trying to make something come alive in narrative form when you're used to seeing it in a visual media. But yeah, it was interesting getting to hear Sally's backstory, but I'm not going to remember much more from this in the future. My next read was a 3.5 and a 6 in core pile, and that was Legendborn by Tracy Dale. This was a very good book. It's just not targeted for me because it is a YA. It felt very YA in some of the choices that it went, and so I was constantly pulled out of the story. I also don't think that February was the right month for me, or end of January, beginning of February was the right time for me to be reading it because I was so distractible with everything going on. So I do acknowledge that it's probably more of a me problem than the book problem, but it was just one of those things. I kept being pulled out by some of the choices. I found it very hard to stay in the story, and I do feel like it's a solid foundation that's being built, so I'm excited to continue on with these characters and see how much they grow and develop, which I'm very excited for. So I do feel like the next books in the series will be higher rated for me. Just unfortunately this one didn't hit me in the same feelings, and I'm so gutted about it because I wanted to adore it. That could have been me also going in with too high expectations. I still had a lovely time with it, but there were just so many things that kept pulling me out of the story that I was like, oh god. And because it is that little bit thicker, I just, like I said, I don't think it was the right month for me to be reading it, so unfortunately it wasn't rated higher, but still a good rating of a 3.5. It does what it's designed to do for a YA audience exceptionally well. I'm just not a young adult anymore. Next up we have Quest by Angie Sage, and this was a 4 stars and a 7.5 in core pile. I was looking back and I'm like, why is this rated higher? And I realized it's because I adore these characters. I'm very familiar with the world. This was the kind of book that I needed to read in February because it was comforting, it was fun, had moments of seriousness, but it is one of those middle grades that is just so adventurous and so like a breath of fresh air, which is definitely what I needed. So I also feel like I'm well versed in this world, so it was very easy to fall into, and this was exactly what I needed to read because I just had a fun time with it. That's what I needed, and I do enjoy the medieval setting. I do like where we're going with the characters, and after the ending of the last book, I'm glad for where we go in this. Can't say too much more because it is the 4th book in the series, but I'm very excited to continue on and get to the last 3 books because I'm very curious to see what Septimus gets up to. We have come a very long way from where he started in the 1st book, and I just really enjoy being with these characters, spending time in this world, and hearing about the ghosts. The next 2 are rated exactly the same, which is a 4.5 and an 8 in core pile, and that is To Catch a Firefly by Emmy Sanders. I adore these characters. Sometimes I wanted to smack them over the head and just communicate, like that is the thing that people need to do, but oh my gosh, my heart, my soul just goes to these boys. I really just loved seeing this character exploration. There's not too much plot, but we do just get to grow up with these 2 boys and see life from their eyes. And then when one of the mamas was just like, FYI, I was like, holy mother of fuck, because the rep was, I think he handled really well considering it's not Own Voices, but please take it with a grain of salt and check Own Voices reviews. I just really loved getting to be with these characters, and I just had a really lovely time with it. The other 4.5 and an 8 in core pile is Bitter by Akwaeke Emezi. Akwaeke Emezi's writing just hits so powerfully. I adore their writing, and I think for me there's sort of a disconnect in my brain because I wish I had have read Pet closer to it, because there was a prominent thing that happened in Pet that I forgot about until I was looking at reviews, and I'm like, oh yeah, because we meet characters in here and it's like, I didn't have as much of an emotional connection because I forgot that that was how things were playing out. But then if I read them too close together, I don't feel like they would have been able to stand as their own stories, because I do feel like going into Bitter with the knowledge of Pet, a lot of the world building was done in Pet, and I feel like whilst it was talked about and gone into a little bit more detail in Bitter, there were things that if I hadn't have read Pet, I wouldn't have understood. So I felt like it relied a little bit too much on having that knowledge, and I do like for books to be able to be standalones, especially if you're doing this as the introductory story to the world. So it was interesting in that regard, and I kept going back and forth between Pet and this, and that's where I think my rating was slightly lower. But oh my god, just Akwaeke Emezi's commentary, their writing, it's just phenomenal. I love these characters, and just really in the feelings for this one. And then my highest read for February was Looking Glass by Christina Henry, and I gave this a 4.5 and it came out as an 8.1. There was literally a 0.1 of a difference between my top 3. This is the perfect conclusion to the Looking Glass Chronicles. I don't think it needed another book to tie it all together, but doing a collection of short stories or novellas was perfect, because we get introduced to one new character which just twists you in the feelings, and then we're following through seeing the finale of Alice's story, and it's just fantastic. Christina Henry knows how to make me uncomfortable, and I love that. I absolutely adore the way that I feel so disgusting reading these books. It's fabulous. Please do not read this as its own like standalone thing. It definitely is the 3rd book in the Alice Chronicles, or the Chronicles of Alice. You will need to have read the other 2 books to be able to go into this. Otherwise there's, you know, spoils a lot for the first 2. I was so happy with how this ended, and I just adored getting a little bit more backstory, a little bit more continuation at the end. Just exceptionally done. So, a rather quick wrap up for today, but this is the stack of books that I read in February, and I'm still impressed that I managed to get through all of this, considering To Catch a Firefly was a physical read, and then I was bringing Legendborn over from January. So I'm very impressed that I managed to get through what I did and had an exceptional time with it as well. Let me know in the comments how your February went. Did you find a new favorite read? What was the best book that you read? I'd love to hear any recommendations you have in the comments down below. And anything else you want to let me know, feel free to leave it in the comments down below. And if you like this video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more of this mess, feel free to subscribe. I'll hopefully see you on my next video or over on my Patreon. Bye!